Hello and welcome to the Musty Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Jesús, and I'm joined by my friend and yours,
Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
We are the Musty Collective, creatives on a journey to better storytelling. That journey's taking a really long time. Thank you for joining us today, even though it's musty in here. Oh, yes. Yes.
Big ol' whiff.
Big ol' whiff of that must. Today we're going to talk about The Woman King.
Yes. Very excited.
This is a long time coming.
Mm-hmm.
So for the faithful, we appreciate you. The faithful shall be rewarded. So let's start the show. All right, so we just want to say, to preface this, we are going to talk about the entire film in depth. So if you haven't seen this film, go see it right now. Pause and go see it right now. It's on Netflix. You can watch it on Netflix. If you want to jump into our Discord, just join the Patreon, join the Discord, and let me know. Say, hey, I joined this so we can watch The Woman King. I will find a way to share it with you.
Yeah, we usually don't have people pause. We just usually do the disclaimer of yeah, this is a spoiler show. But this film is so good that it would be a shame to not see it.
It is so good. And it's a travesty what has happened to this film in the media. But we might get into that. We'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. So before we get into the film, I wanted to get to know the director a little bit.
Yes, so the director of this film is Gina Prince Bythewood, and she directed other projects like Women of the Movement, The Old Guard, Cloak and Dagger, The Secret Life of Bees, and Love and Basketball.
Oh, wow. So this director has been releasing films featuring women leads and action for some time. All right, Michelle, give us the movie tagline.
Okay, so it is a historical epic inspired by true events that took place in the kingdom of Dahomey, one of the most powerful states of Africa in the 18th and 19th centuries.
A historical epic inspired by true events. That is key language. That is key language, people. It is not based on a true story. It's inspired by true events.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't this be more of a summary than a tagline?
It's what I call a tagline.
Or a synopsis?
It's what's on IMDb. That's what I use.
Okay.
And also, Viola Davis was a producer on this film, and she just did a wonderful job. Mm-hmm. From a producing standpoint, from an acting standpoint. On her film, she didn't have someone get shot and killed on the set.
What?
I'm just saying, that's a pretty big deal nowadays. You just can't trust.
Oh my goodness.
Star-led films they're also producing. I'm just putting it out there.
Okay. Well, first of all, the ratio of actors being producers on films and somebody getting killed on set is super small.
Yes, it's so small. It only happened to one actor / producer, and that person I'm not going to name, but I'm just saying.
But we all know
Viola Davis wasn't that person, which is great. So success for her.
If that's the bar, just don't get someone killed.
I'm just saying she didn't do it. I'm just saying she didn't do it. She didn't allow for that kind of space.
This is a fact. Okay.
These are facts. Yeah.
Okay. So the cast of this film is amazing. We have Viola Davis as Naniska.
Yes, Nthuso Mbed as Nawi, Lashana Lynch as Izogi, Sheila Atim as Amenza, John Boyega as King Gizo, Jordan Bolger as Malik, Jimmy Odukoya as Oba Ade, or Oba Ade. Not sure how the pronunciation on that, but yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think the casting was amazing. Like, there was no doubt in my mind that these actors were the people they were playing. Like, as
Yes.
I was watching it,
Very believable roles.
yes, amazing casting, and I think that the personalities of each actor fit the character really well. There are times in movies when people cast someone just because they're famous, but they don't necessarily like fit the part.
Yeah, and I really just want to speak to Viola Davis, who I believe was born in the U.S. If I'm incorrect, then murder me, internet. But
No.
I believe she was born in the U.S., but she's playing an African warrior. An ancient, I don't know if it's been long enough to say ancient, but an older civilization African warrior, right? And even though she is born here and she is black, she's African American, but she was almost like built for the part, right?
Like physically?
Physically, like, yeah, she did a lot of work to get to that point. But I had no doubt in my mind when I saw the first trailer that Viola Davis was, dare I say, created by God for this role. You know, just some people really do that for you,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm forgetting his name, but the man who plays Thor for the Marvel MCU series,
Chris
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
Right, built to play that character, right? And Viola Davis as Naniska, just perfect, perfect. I believed, and it's not a character I've known before, but just everything was believable in her leading role.
Yeah.
Everything was downright just believable. It was amazing.
I think when you said that, it made me think of an interview I saw her do for the film, and she was talking about the same thing. I think, like, throughout her career in Hollywood, she's felt thick in a bad way.
And when we say thick, we're talking about THICC thick.
Yes.
Right.
And
right.
so, like, this role came, and it did fit her. She said she felt like it like fit her body type and everything. So that was interesting. You said that.
Yeah. And you can see it. We have the Blu-ray at home and we watched some behind the scenes. They still did a lot of the whole cast. Well, not John Boyega. I don't think he did any work.
He just sat in a chair the whole
And
movie.
just like, my love, my love, my love. Just beautiful. I love John Boyega's part. But besides him, everybody else worked really hard to be those characters on set.
Yes.
Like Lashana Lynch and Viola Davis, like, really put in that effort. Thuso Embed as well.
And the director did it with them.
Right. Gina Prince. Yeah.
Which was cool. I've never heard of that before.
No, that was awesome. I mean, from what I remember in my research, she is a former athlete. I think she played college ball in the NCAA.
Yeah.
I think so. And so that totally tracks. Accuracy that this film portrayed it as, and we'll get more into it in a later conversation, but in this conversation essentially just want to outline here the real main conflict, that the main controversy is that the woman king is exemplifying a nation and warriors. So we're talking about the Home and the warriors who benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. And so it was crazy when I feel it. I'm getting the feelings now. I'm feeling triggered. Honestly, just bring this up because it became such a big deal. And I understand it though. I do understand some of the other sides take, like, you're exemplifying, encouraging, you're kind of gratifying, celebrating this country that actually hurt people. And this is like a very strong take. But when we were discussing this with some people in the Discord, like the way I kind of see the perspective is that if someone was to make a historical epic inspired by the true events on the rape of Nanking from the side of the Japanese soldiers, then I mean I could see a lot of people being pissed about that, right? And I could see myself being really mad about that. And so like when I said that, you know, another person in the Discord was like, "Yeah, it's exactly like that." In hindsight, after watching the film, because this is before we watched the film, I can now say it's not quite like that. And also, I distinctly said in that conversation on the Discord server that the film had to be good. Like if it was trash, we're like, okay, whatever, you know, like yeah, historically inaccurate. But the film had to be great. It had not just good; it had to be great for all this controversy to kind of wash away. And well, we went to go watch it. And what was your feeling about the film when you left the theater?
I haven't had an experience like that in a while. It felt almost like I don't know if this will make sense to anybody, but like the way that I experienced it was like how I used to experience movies when I was younger. Like Gladiator, Titanic, those types of movies. Just like it just seemed so epic and big, and the characters made me feel so much. And I'll have to admit I've been jaded a while by a lot of movies, and it's getting rarer and rarer that I actually experience something and think, wow, that was a really awesome movie experience. Like just watching that film, I was like totally immersed. But with this film, I left the theater and I was like so on fire for it, and I love the story, and I just wanted to share it with everybody because I had that old nostalgic feeling of like older movies I used to watch.
Yeah, and so this is 2022, and we will talk about the other films that it's compared to when we get to the Oscars part of this. But I completely agree with that take. I came in like I was skeptical. I knew about the controversy, but I had loved the trailer, and I was so happy to see Viola Davis in that kind of a role. And I was ready to see a story where the African peoples took matters into their own hands instead of, oh, you know, slavery happened kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, da 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 da.
There was no
like,
white savior.
Yeah, and I was just like ready to experience something like that. But I didn't know how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, what I like about it is that it's just straight on through what it says it's going to be. I will, you know, again, we can talk about more in another conversation. Some of the marketing for the film was a little bit off.
Like the messaging?
I'd say some of the messaging could have been a lot better to avoid the controversy that happened. But the film itself from the very onset never stated itself to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
And the film brought up, and in my opinion dealt with, within the confines of its story, like the controversy that people had with it, the problems that people had with it. But going back to just my feeling of it, it was just a great experience. It was, hey, watch this film. Epic warrior does epic things like a gladiator, and you will be satisfied. The combat was great. The story, the characters I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And it was more amazing to me than something like Black Panther, which I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but it was so good. The first Black Panther was so good. But the thing for me is that Black Panther, I know, is fake. Whereas The Woman King, yes, it's still a fake story. It didn't happen. But it's based in more reality, way more reality than Black Panther.
Yeah, like a version of this did happen in reality.
And this story could have happened if a couple things had gone the way that the writers of this story had it gone. Then this could have been historically accurate.
Yeah, but a lot of it was accurate though. There were just some elements that were changed.
Yeah,
right?
I won't go that strong.
Okay.
But again, we can contend with that when we go again into another conversation about this. But it was really good. So the movie deals with the issue of the transatlantic slave trade, but it gives a hopeful fictional outcome. And that's what I really took from me. This was at the same time that in the theater for The Woman King, we had the trailer for the Emmett Till movie, which I still haven't seen, but I still do want to see at some point. And that's a tragic story. And no one's going to say that was historically accurate. No one even really cared about that film as far as I saw from the box office numbers. It didn't even get a nomination for anything. And I'm just tired of hearing those type of stories.
Yeah.
And this is fictional. It's not a real story, but it was hopeful to say, hey, this is something that could have happened. And the African peoples are not completely helpless.
Yeah.
And their descendants, like myself, are not completely helpless. That's what I took from it.
Yeah. So do you think Viola Davis should have been nominated and have won an Oscar for her role?
That is a great question. That is a great question. I have a lot to say, but I'm going to allow you to go first after I just say this a little bit, answering your question. It's a maybe.
Okay.
I definitely think she should have been nominated. And then I'm gonna give the floor back to you, and I'm gonna come back in later.
Okay. Well, it is hard because there were a lot of great nominees, and the Michelle Yeoh, who did win for Everything Everywhere All at Once, she deserved that, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want this conversation to take anything away from Michelle Yeoh or the film Everything Everywhere All at Once.
But
I don't want anything about that.
Yeah, but I do agree that Viola should have been nominated. She was nominated for a
100%.
Golden Globe.
Yeah.
But not for an Oscar.
Yes.
And I think...
But see, no one pays attention to the Golden Globes. And that's the thing. People pay attention to Oscars. The headlines are the Oscars.
Yeah, so, that's my take. I think she should have been nominated, and it's a shame that she wasn't.
Okay. So, I agree. I just want to go back to the nominees. And the nominees for actress in the leading role are Michelle Yeoh, Everything Ever All at Once. Woo, yeah, woo. Cate Blanchett for Tar. Woo, yeah, woo. Ana de Armas for Blonde.
No.
Andrea Riseborough for To Leslie. Michelle Williams for The Fabelmans.
Wow.
So, and I watched 3 of these films. I watched Tar, Everything All at Once, and The Fabelmans. I didn't watch Blonde. I was going to watch Blonde and when it came out on Netflix. And then everyone, like, if we talk about controversy, Blonde had more, in my opinion, more controversy and more, like, legitimate controversy portraying Marilyn Monroe more than Viola in The Woman King. And she still got nominated. Like, I was still on Twitter when this controversy popped up, but the whole take on her was like she defamed Marilyn Monroe. Like the estate of Marilyn Monroe was like, this film does not depict this woman correctly. And then Ana de Armas's like role, like, and her acting, whether it was good or not, like a lot of people believe that it was just like a terrible take on Marilyn.
And her story.
Because the film Blonde is based on a book that was written by like a so-called hater of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh.
Right? So I'm just like, and again, if I'm wrong, internet, come and get me. But like, that's what I remember reading on Twitter. And I know it's like, don't believe everything on Twitter. I get it. But this is pre-Elon, right? This is pre-Elon. And I'm just like, y'all, like, for real? We're gonna nominate Blonde Now, let's not even talk about Andrea Riseborough and To Leslie. Who saw that film?
I didn't even hear about it until I saw it nominated.
I talked to people in Hollywood because now we hear, like we actually are here. And they didn't even watch this film. There's like a small group of people who watch this film. And I personally do think like if you're going to get nominated, unless there's no other great films out there, but I think Woman King made at least 30 mil or so at the box office. Like it made a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
You got to nominate films that people have seen, controversy or not. If people have seen it and it's made decent amount of money, then you have to nominate these films. Right? And nominate the actors that did the amazing performances in those films.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the amount of money a movie makes deters the Oscars from nominating it because they want to seem like they're indie and cool and like.
But see,
I don't know.
I agree with you, but then Everything All at Once became an indie box office hit. I think it grossed over $100 million in the U.S. box office alone. So that's right. And it won like 7 awards. So I don't think it had to be that reason.
Yeah.
And going to Michelle Williams' performance, it wasn't bad. But did I really?
It was a great performance. It was just compared to the other options, I feel like it didn't quite add up.
That's where I disagree. Like I thought it was an okay performance, like a good performance, good, almost good. Like there wasn't any, like the role that she had. There wasn't much for her to give. It was just more the context of what her character was doing and what it meant to Steven Spielberg, because it's the Feldmans, but it's really the Spielbergs.
Yeah,
it's Steven Spielberg telling on his mom that his mom cheated on his dad with his dad's best friend. That's the story, right? If you're like, hey, don't spoil the movie, that's the movie. And there's no scenes except for maybe the scene where she's flashing everybody while she's dancing, where I would say Michelle Williams deserved an Oscar there. Where like in watching Tar, even though it's kind of slow, not kind of, it's very slow.
The performance was great.
Performance and Cate Blanchett. Like if Cate Blanchett had won the Oscar, I would have been a little slightly mad because I still think Michelle Yeoh should have won it. But I wouldn't be too mad because Cate Blanchett carried the film, and there's multiple scenes I can point to, like the 10-minute long scene that didn't cut, where she's talking to the student and kind of having this go back and forth and just destroying him with words, and then the scene where she just goes berserk and like tackles the conductor. Like there are scenes like this, the scene where she goes into the sewer kind of area looking for her assistant or whatever, and then falls down because she's scared of a dog like coming at her, and it was a scary dog by the sound of it. Those are scenes where I just like totally believe this woman, totally believe this character, totally believe we're in this world. Yeah. The opening scene where she's having the back and forth when she's being interviewed as the woman Tar, right? They're like, I just gave you 4 scenes. I can't give you a single scene with Michelle Williams in the Feldmans where I'm like, yeah, that deserves an Oscar.
I can. But I don't want this whole thing to be about Michelle Williams, so.
All right, I'm just saying. But I could give you a whole movie where Viola Davis literally puts the movie on her back, her literal shoulders. Yeah. Her broad, muscular, thick shoulders. And she takes over the film and she says, I will lead you to the promised land. And I believe her fully and engaged and immersive, taking my bias out of the perspective. I don't see how you don't nominate this woman for I'm not saying she should win it, because she just happened to come out in 2022 with Michelle Yeoh, but she definitely should have got a nomination. And the fact that she didn't is a travesty and it's disgusting. And I'm like, I don't understand how the Academy just did that. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, 94% critics review and 99% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes should have told them something. It was a great film. And then on IMDb, it got 6.8. Not as great, but I mean, it's still pretty decent. I don't know. I don't know, man.
It's really kind of whack. Yeah. And 2022 wasn't even that good of a movie for year for movies. Like 2021 was really good. 2019, really good. And I was just ashamed or embarrassed because I actually watch the Oscars. I don't watch them all in entirety, but I do watch it. I try to watch most of it. And I the main thing, like, because I know people be like, oh, it's just awards. No, who cares about awards? It's about it's a pinpoint on the industry. And not just the entertainment industry, but the industry or the process or the whole society of storytelling. At this point in time in 2023, looking back at 2022, we believe that these are the stories that, one, matter the most, two, tell the best stories about what it means to be human, and three, are the type of stories that we hope can continue to be told in the future. I just want everyone to understand that, like, it's not just an award show. Yeah. Right? It's literally a pinpoint marker in the timeline of modern human history of saying, hey, we as a group of people with the elect of the Academy are deciding that these are the most important stories and the types of stories that should be told continuously in the future ongoing. Yeah. And these are this is the way in which we want the world to move, because as we know, if you've been a long time listener on this podcast and you have studied storytelling is how the world learns about itself and how the world teaches the next generation. And what we have now taught the next generation is that Black women in leading roles doing amazing jobs do not matter. Because it wasn't just Viola Davis, but it was the woman for Emmett Till's movie didn't get nominated. Like, it just keeps going on and on. Hidden Figures, this goes back to Hidden Figures. Like, but they do matter if they're put in a slave role. Yeah. They do matter if they're put in an abusive relationship. Like, this is what we're saying. Yeah. I'm not saying we're doing this in like purposefully, but unintentionally, this is what we're saying.
We're subconsciously,
because what's going to happen, because I had a whole bit that I was going to talk about where, like, should we continue telling these stories, but also, like, what is the prerogative of these producers and these studios when they be like, you present them a movie that's similar to The Woman King? No, we don't want to touch that because it had controversy. It made some money, but it didn't get much love from Hollywood. So there's like this, it's the three things, like controversy, doesn't make enough money. And The Woman King actually made a good amount of money. I had the number wrong, but it did make some good money. But then it didn't get any critical love, because these type of movies, you're not expecting them to be bangers. Like, you're not expecting to make $1 billion, but you're expecting to get some love from the critics. Yeah. Right. And to get some nominations and some awards, because that's how people progress in the industry. They're like, hey, I made this film. Oh, okay. This film won awards. You must be good. We're going to get you to the next project. Yeah. Right. So,
so many feelings.
Yeah.
Well, on to more feelings. Right. I wanted to talk about the mother-daughter relationship between Naniska and her daughter. I do not remember the name right now.
Nawi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think that was really powerful, and the way they revealed it was very unique. I've never seen an adoption reveal like that before.
I can't remember it, but I do know people be like, oh, come on, could have seen that coming a mile away. I don't know, like, are we all just jaded? But I thought that was epic.
When she started talking about how she had a daughter, but that was like really soon after or before the reveal, so it wasn't like...
Yeah, no, she had that scene, and I'm forgetting.
She had the nightmare, and she was like
talking to her best friend.
And then so it was hinting then.
But still, like, it's not, movies are not all about spoilers, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, it's how the story flowed. The plot points are, yes, like we got the early sign. This is a lantern. Here's the plot point. But we have to see it delivered to us.
Yeah.
And that scene in the jacuzzi, bath, pool, whatever, and she like takes a knife and cuts her flesh. Like, that was crazy to me.
And it would be understandable, like, why Nawi would be freaking out. Like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it turns out she's her mama.
Yeah.
So that was really crazy to me. And I didn't see it coming at all. I would totally have seen it coming if they did that flashback, like at the very beginning of the movie, maybe, like when it shows her younger and then it like fast forwards to her now.
But you're talking about the bone in her flesh.
Yeah. So if it showed like Naniska pregnant and giving birth, and then it cuts to like Naniska now and her as like a warrior. Naniska. Like a warrior now. Then like I would have totally seen it from the beginning, but they didn't show any of that until like really close to the moment when they did reveal it.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. I really like how that played out.
Agree. No, I completely agree. It was amazing. And it also makes you hate more of like Oba Ade. And because he was like the main villain, but now you really have this extra meaning. And I think from a script perspective, the authors did a great job really layering this story. You have the overall conflict, the transatlantic slave trade. Then you have the conflict between mother-daughter, Naniska Nawi. You have Nawi with her peers, Nawi with her superiors, like Izogi. And then you have the conflict with the antagonist, right? So there were so many layers, right? And then there's John Boyega's King Gizo's character, and obviously in history he's a true historical character that really we frown upon because he continued to transact the slave, right, in Dahomey. But John Boyega, it's hard to hate him on screen. You gotta love the dude. He has so much charm, and his conflict with Naniska. Like, there were so many layers. So many layers.
Yeah.
It was just really, really good.
One of the things out of all the layers that I did appreciate but was also hard to watch was just the sexual abuse that Naniska went through.
Yep.
And how she handled that, and like her accepting her daughter at the end was really like a healing moment for her.
Yeah.
And I think it meant... I don't know. I think it meant a lot to a lot of other women who've gone through similar experiences.
Yeah, and it's always great when you can take out the person who did that to you.
I know, it's like a fantasy of a lot of women.
Yeah, like it reminded me of in your time in film school where you were talking about some like peers, some colleagues, some students who were making films, and they were like, in all their films the woman was like taking out the dude. And I don't know if you remember this, but for some reason this is a distinct memory in my mind. And I was just thinking back to that right now.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
But like I do think there's a whole like genre of like, you know, revenge, like female revenge.
Yeah.
If that's the right title for it. And
very therapeutic.
Gotta be real. You gotta be real on that one.
Oh, man.
So going back to the reviews of The Woman King, we know that it was received well by the critics and by the audience who watched it. But let's break down some of the reviews that are more on the fringe and some that are also talking critically about the film and going into why this film was so controversial. And I put that in double quotes because I don't think the film was that controversial. Definitely not more controversial than Anna de Armas and Blonde from last year. That film was way more controversial in my opinion. But let's break down this first review from Crooked Marquis, a review of The Woman King. And we took a snippet out of the review and it says this: The Woman King takes some liberties with history in its script from Dana Stevens that also features a story credit from actress Maria Bello, particularly around slavery. The Dahomey Kingdom also sold Africans into slavery, which the film acknowledges. Yet, The Woman King has the fictional Naniska fighting against the practice, which makes sense for a movie made in 2022 that wants you to root for its protagonists and their sisterhood. The larger issue with the script is Stevens' uninspired dialogue, though the talented cast often makes it sound better than it actually is. An unnecessary romantic subplot featuring Nawi and a Brazilian slave trader Malik seems only to exist to ensure that a movie led by women has the requisite love story and to show off Bolger's physique. It's just as silly and superfluous as when a male-led action movie has female eye candy. But, the women in my screening did not seem to mind his often shirtless appearances. All right, so I don't know if you want to comment on the whole physique with Malik thing. It, as my dad would always say, it was a beautiful body. but so if you want to comment on that, Michelle.
No comment.
No comment. All right.
It wasn't eye candy for me.
Very good.
I'll
very
just
good.
say that.
Very good. Okay, let's just move on. But like going back to what she's saying, right? So, or who the author is of this article, the main point of how the script handles or talks about slavery, right? That was a big contention that I saw online in the YouTube comments and in the Twitter feeds, posts, tweets, threads, all that stuff. It was about the slavery aspect. The fact that the Agosier had also lost a battle against the French later on in history. This was something that I thought would come up in the film since a lot of people had talked about it in the YouTube comments. But this was not in the story or screenplay at all. So, yeah, it was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, I guess, like the spin people are putting on this film is that it doesn't even address it, but it clearly does. So I'm not sure what their problem is.
Yeah, I really wonder, not this author, because she actually knows the film and acknowledges it, but the people who were leading campaigns against this film in 2022, I do wonder if they actually watched the film, because I came in with expectations that the film would not acknowledge this aspect of the history. And I was really surprised that the film had multiple scenes acknowledging it. And we'll get into those scenes later on.
I think too, like the people who edit the trailers and create the marketing aren't the same people that edit the actual film itself.
Yes.
So there is a chance that like executives and trailer editors are getting different notes than the actual film, and they're creating kind of their own version of what they think it should be, so it's not like completely accurate.
Yeah, that's a super good point. Thank you, Michelle.
And then the rest of this specific review says, despite the script issues, Prince Bythewood's direction and visuals make this an easy film to like. The Woman King looks great, with cinematography from Polly Morgan that captures both the exciting action sequences and gorgeously illuminates black actors' skin in a way that many movies still struggle with. Gersha Phillips' costumes are impressively detailed, from their vibrant fabrics to the cowrie shells, and studding Naniska's woven leather, armor-like bra. Unlike most recent franchise blockbusters, this actually looks like a movie where people gave a damn, shot on location with a sense of realism embedded in each frame.
Yes, exactly. And this is one reason why, again, I am shocked. Like, if you don't want to give a nomination to Viola Davis, which I don't understand why you wouldn't. If you don't want to give Gina Prince Bythewood a Best Director nomination, fine. But the film itself looks amazing. It's paced really well. It should have at least gotten something for set design, costume design, and for best film. It should have at least gotten those three, in my opinion. And if you don't like the script, then you don't have to nominate for the script.
Yeah.
Right? But for those things alone, even cinematography, it was great. And where people, like what I see online, they bemoan the fact that movies aren't shot on location. And this film was shot on an actual set in Africa, I believe. And it just looks gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And you really are transported and immersed into this ancient or long time ago African world. It was an amazing looking movie.
Yeah.
And it was really well directed.
Mm-hmm. And that was a somewhat favorable review, even though it did have some critiques. But there is another article from National Review, and it's not so favorable.
Yes. So this is from National Review. The Woman King is bad news. That's the article. And so it says, historical fraudulence is a problem, but the reasons behind it are what cause alarm. Director Gina Prince Bythewood and screenwriters Dana Stevens and Maria Bello gainsay the Dahome's role in the slave trade, trivializing the complications of that original sin. Instead, they offer another millennial gender flip, conceived to further sexual confusion via racial frustration and feminist anger. That is a whole lot in a statement.
Yeah.
That was just, we had to capture, this is not the whole article, but we had to capture at least this. There's a lot going on here. Another millennial gender flip conceived to further sexual confusion via racial frustration and feminist anger. I'm not going to say their ages, but director Gina Prince Bythewood, Viola Davis, they're not millennials. Mm-hmm. Right? So I don't understand that particular notion. It's just a hate on my generation. And that's fine if you want to hate on my generation. We are just the greatest generation. Just get over it. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say that. Millennials are the best. But gender flip? This wasn't a gender flip.
Well,
the Goje were female.
Yeah.
Unless I'm reading that wrong.
No, I think it's like, I mean, you'll see as we finish this part of the article, but this person is very much fueled. Their review is fueled by politics. From
a historical context and what the story and the script show off, there's no gender flipping happening. This is not like, I'm trying to think of an example of a crazy gender flip, and I cannot think of one right off the top of my head that happened recently. That was a really big deal. Like Captain America is still a man, so I don't know. I'm confused. But it was conceived. So this film was conceived, and in this author's words, to further sexual confusion via racial frustration and feminist anger. Yeah, there's racial frustration, but this film is not furthering it. And there's feminist anger, rightfully so. But this film is not furthering it. It's just establishing. In fact, this actually, from a racial standpoint, and I can't speak for all the feminists in the room, but I can say for myself, like, this film felt good to watch because I felt seen.
Yeah.
And it was a story where I looked at the heroes and I could, like, identify with them. Mm-hmm. All right, continuing on with this article. This approach cannot be taken seriously because, like Black Panther and The Lion King, like, why is he putting those two together?
Lion King?
The Woman King, the Woman King is juvenile. That is...
The Lion King is a children's movie.
Yes, that is true. Black Panther definitely is not juvenile. That's a weird take.
What?
The film's comic book premise treats black audiences like children. And that's very interesting. If you look at this author, It's very interesting, right? So the adolescent kick over hair pulling catfights is extended into an almost laughable pseudo political history lesson pitting women against men. Yes, in the battle there were women against men, but in the society of the Home, it wasn't women against men. They worked together as a unified force. Consider it deriving from Black Lives Matter's attack on the black family, honoring butch women as standard bearers in the battle against toxic, ineffectual masculinity, right? And we're going to stop there because this is crazy.
Yeah.
There's just so much in this article that's not even really dissecting and analyzing the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is definitely through a specific lens. And I don't know. It's just, this person just seems so angry. I feel bad.
Yeah, I want to just go back to that part where it says, consider it deriving from Black Lives Matter's attack on the black family.
That's a big statement.
King Gizo, who's played by John Boyega, who is male and clearly encouraged to be male in this film, and has multiple wives and has this whole thing about my loves, which is quite funny and hilarious, pushing a very heterosexual, like, patriarchal structure. And yes, towards the end of the film, that changes with the Woman King edition of Naniska. But King Gizo is still on the throne.
Yeah.
He is still male. He is still heterosexual. Like, he's all the things that, if you're saying the attack on the black family of tearing down male leadership, black male leadership in the family, King Gizo's still on the throne. He's just not the protagonist of the film.
I think too, like, I mean, just with like Malik and Nawi's relationship and the way that Naniska and Nawi had that moment at the end of the film, it was like that hard exterior. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it showed the feminine side of the women. So it wasn't like
a
this,
soft. You mean a softer side?
Yeah, softer side. So it was like, it wasn't like they were completely like these hard masculine women that like didn't have any feelings.
Yes.
Because the whole, I mean,
she was a mother reconciling with her daughter.
Yeah, the whole story arc of Naniska is her realizing this whole concept of you can't shed a tear was incorrect, because she needed that in order to accept her daughter and to heal from all of the past sexual assault she experienced. So I think like this idea that this person's pushing, that it's like women trying to be men, I think it's incorrect, because I mean, first of all, women can do what men can do, so it's not women trying to be men, but it's like it doesn't leave out the softer, like feminine kind of stuff. Like when Malik and Nawi are in a relationship together, I think it showed her like feminine side, because she was like flirting with him and like all that stuff. It had all of that stuff in it.
That's true.
So it's, I don't know where this guy's coming from.
And I know that this person watched the movie, but it again does not seem like they want to analyze the film for what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And we all have biases at play, but you have to analyze the film. And so this is definitely, this kind of stuff fuels the culture war. It fuels the anti campaigns against this film. Again, it was such an amazing film. I really encourage people to watch it. Don't just, form your own opinions on the film, and watch it for what it is. All right. So to address the concerns that the film does not deal with the topic of slavery, let's actually go to the screenplay, the script. We have a copy of the script. It's one of the beautiful things, again, about award shows, because then movies or TV shows that want to be considered for awards actually publish their scripts for a short time in the public sphere. You can get a copy and download them and like read them. It's really cool. So we start here on page 14 of the script. And it starts with interior palace. So if you never like read a script before, a screenplay, there's a lot of notices of locations. And Michelle knows a lot more about this than I do. So if I get something wrong, Michelle, correct me.
Okay.
But interior palace, king's private chambers. And I'm not going to read everything, but just want to set the context for this. It says a line of women sit in an assortment of gilt or jilt European chairs. This is his harem. This is King Gizo's harem. And then it has here King Gizo. Or wait, before we get to that part. At the end of this line of chairs, we find Aniska standing still in her blood-smeared clothing. So this is right after like the opening fight in the film. And we have here King Gizo, 28, enters the room, accompanied by Tanu or Tanonu. Gizo is handsome, youthful at the beginning of his reign. Perfectly describes John Boyega. And he's at the beginning of his reign, which is a big major point from a historical standpoint. And just again, my opinion from the history, King Gizo didn't start the slave trade until like later in his reign. So it could have been like a year or two later. It could have been like a month later after the story. But what I like how the writers are framing this with the context is that Gizo is young in his reign, right? And there's slave trade happening, but he can be molded or changed or have his opinion change in a way. So I just like that framing. Mm-hmm. He's at the beginning of his reign. He wears a long robe embroidered with crocodiles. The only ornament, a small gold chain of European manufacture. He walks as if the earth were honored by its burden. I think that's really good writing. Mm-hmm. I think it's really good writing. So then we come with some of the dialogue. Gizo, Naniska, come with me. The other women's eyes follow them out. A beautiful wife, Shantae, speaks to Tanonu. So Shantae and Naniska have this like rivaling relationship in the movie, and it adds like another layer, like a C subplot kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We have Gizo and Naniska, and Gizo says, "Why do you wait with the wives?" Naniska, "I need to speak to you before the council convenes. The Mahi tribe did not raid our village alone. They had help from the Oyo." So that's really the main antagonist in the film. There are also the Europeans, and that's a point of the film. But really, what wasn't in the marketing enough, in my opinion, was the fact that the Dahomey are fighting the Oyo. So she continues, "They attack our people in alliance with the Mahi. They have broken the treaty. Gizo, it is not my treaty. My brother bowed to them, paid them their blood money." Naniska, "They are testing the new king, Gizo. So we will do as they do. Raid the Oyo villages, sell their people." So this is interesting framing too. This might speak to like the more traditionally interpreted Gizo kind of personality, that he is actually ready to go and fight and take on other African nations and tribes. Mm-hmm. Naniska, "And who does that help? The white traders, not us." Right? So this is the fiction, right? This is the part where we don't really know if they had these kind of talks, and it's not really given to us in history. But the framing of, and we'll let the script speak for itself. Gizo, "It shows them that we are no longer afraid." Niska, "You know the changes at our port in Oida. The English are gone. They will no longer trade in captives." And I think that's also very important from a historical standpoint, that the English by this time the British have stopped slave trade. Gizo, "Empty words. Americans, Portuguese, Dutch, they will never stop the trade." Naniska, "And this is why the Oyo wish to conquer us." Gizo, "Conquer us? They test you to see if we fight back, Naniska. And if we do not, they will mount a larger attack, perhaps even here on our capital. Naniska, "We must end the Oyo and end the trade for all of us." So this, again, Naniska as like a fictional character is brought to us to appeal to the 2022 side of us, saying we must end slavery. Naniska, "I fought for you against your brother because I knew you cared for our people. And now you counsel me to take them to war. Some things are worth fighting for." And we'll stop it there. But that's that first kind of conversation, and it does continue in the next scene when they have the convening of the ministers of Gizo and his other generals and other counselors and advisors to Gizo, and they talk more about this. And Niska keeps pushing this idea of like, let's end the slave trade. Let's not do this anymore. So again, the film acknowledges the real historical sense, but it is fiction. It is not a documentary. So Niska is going to be this protagonist that we can root for, that's pushing for the end of slave trade in Dahomey.
Wow. That's a whole lot. But I think it does like kind of give you that insight into what could have been. It's like a plausible conversation that could have happened. Yeah, like what you're saying, we don't know for sure what happened, but seemed believable to me.
Yes, and it just shows that there was slave trade under Gisel's rule, which is historical, but at least in this fictional version of the story, not everyone agreed with the practice. Just like America shouldn't be stereotyped, we should not think that everyone in Dahomey agreed with the slave trade. You know, like all Americans love McDonald's, right? I just finished watching Modern Family, and there's that episode where they go to France and they're like, "You're American? Go to McDonald's," right? We shouldn't be I don't appreciate that stereotype.
No.
But yes, and so we shouldn't.
I do love McDonald's.
Michelle does. I'm good. But like, and I think stereotyping all of Dahomey,
yeah,
even though like we may not have historical records of other dissidents saying stop the slave trade, again, the people in power may not have said like, oh, we want to record arguments and opinions that do not agree with us. Like, come on now, people.
Yeah.
Like, when does the patriarchy, when does the hierarchy, when does authority usually do that? So I think this is plausible.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. It's a story with a plausible version of the story of history. And that's totally okay. It's nothing to riot about or to do an anti-campaign about or to say that it's destroying the black family. So
yeah.
It's very interesting.
And I think too, like, when it comes to the end of the movie, when King Gizo actually names Niska as the Woman King, it's cool because they have, I mean, like, just within these conversations, they have a lot of like conflict going on, but they end up landing on the same page at some point.
Yeah, and even just to get off the controversial topic, what I do love about this scene and other scenes like it in the film, and like you said, the ending scene, is they did a good job building up the relationship between Niska and Gizo.
Yeah.
Where it seemed believable that at the end he would choose her as Woman King.
Yeah.
That they were friends, they were compatriots, they both loved their country, and that they could work together in this type of relationship. So yeah, so talking about that last scene, let's go to the screenplay, the script again. I know this is a little bit different for us. We don't do this too often, but I just really thought it was important since we actually had the screenplay to actually check it out. Okay, so we're here at page 107. King Gizo John Boyega is giving this rousing speech at the end, and we'll start here on this page 107. It starts like this. What the Europeans... Sorry, I want to do an accent, but I'm not going to do it.
Just read it.
What the Europeans and the Americans have seen is after the battle that happens at the port. And really cool battle, by the way. What the Europeans and the Americans have seen is that to hold a people in chains, one must first convince them they are meant to be bound. We have joined them in becoming our own oppressors. No more, no more. This is fictional, right? Like, King Gizo didn't do this. He may have done this, and then he's like a month later, he's like, nah, let's keep doing it because it makes us money, right? And capitalism all over again. But it's these are great words. And this is where I do disagree with even the first article about the dialogue. I think the dialogue was good. This is amazing. And also speaking to today as well, to the African-American people, the diaspora of Africa who are watching this film today. Gizo continues, we are a warrior people. There is power in our minds, our culture, our unity. We are limitless if we understand our power. I will lead this vision, a vision that is shared. Gizo looks at Niska. Heroes of Dahomey, behold, the bravest of the brave, chosen of Gizo elevated in his name to the sacred title of, and I'm not even going to say that word because it's an African word, I'm assuming, and I don't know how to say it, so I'm not even trying to try. Naniska, the Woman King. The crowd cheers. Yeah, so very powerful speech. There's a lot of layers in that. We're not going to dissect all of that, what's happening. But I love the first part a lot, where what the Europeans and Americans have seen is that to hold a people in chains, one must first convince them they are meant to be bound.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, the film acknowledges the sin and the fault of the Dahomey, that they joined in becoming their own oppressors.
Yeah.
Right? So again, the film is acknowledging this. And I just wish people watched it and sat there and analyzed it and said, like, okay, this is not a free-for-all, like, the Dahomey's innocent, these women warriors are completely innocent. Like, no, they're complicated. And that should make for interesting characters. But, you know, haters are gonna hate.
Yeah. Conclusion. Does this film kindle love? Jesus.
That's a tough one for me. I want to say yes after going through the script and seeing what Naniska was fighting for, and then that last speech that we just read with John Boyega.
Mm-hmm.
When I first was looking at this film, I would say no. But after looking at the screenplay and talking about it with you, yes, this film is kindling love.
Correct.
Wow. Well, why do you think the film's kindling love?
Her heart was hardened by, understandably so, by all of the horrible things that men had put her through over the years. And just her being able to heal from that and allow her heart to open up to this new daughter that she never thought she would see again. I think that was very powerful.
Yeah, that's a super good point. There are so many layers in this film. There's Naniska going through her trials, and not just like her relationship with Nawi, but her overcoming the sexual abuse that she suffered, the sexual assault that she suffered.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, too, Nawi exists because Naniska was raped.
Right.
And for her to accept Nawi, it was like her accepting all of the things that happened to her. And
also Nawi, like genetically speaking, is like half of her attacker.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what was so crazy at the end. At the end, when Nawi and Naniska are fighting, like her attacker and her father, right? Like,
ugh.
Man, there's so many good layers in there. Give this movie a chance. Like if you love Star Wars like I do, and you love seeing those very meaningful kind of battles like Luke versus Vader kind of stuff, this was it in spades.
Yeah.
This was it in spades.
Yeah. I think, so it did kindle love. It was a powerful film. And if you haven't seen it yet, please go see it, or else I will be very sad.
Yeah, definitely go see The Woman King. And I have loved talking about The Woman King with you and breaking this film down. I know it's taken us a long time to get to this point, but thank you for listening to this. Thank you for being on this journey with us. On our next episode, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do our first round table. Maybe not our first round table, but we're going to do a round table about The Woman King. And we'd love for you, the members of our community, our Musty creatives, our Musty Collective. If you would like to be on there, we need 2 slots because we're trying to do four people, and we're gonna talk about the Women King and have a good time. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know.
And if you want to be featured as a guest on our show, you can email us at themustycreative@gmail.com. And a big thanks to our monthly supporters for helping us make this episode of the Musty Creative Podcast. If you want to be a financial supporter, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/mustycreative.
That's all we have time for today. Remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and find us on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, and Facebook. Now it's time to shower up.
Gives them a satisfaction they couldn't get any other way.